And we are live. Hello and welcome to another episode of the FreudenFreude podcast, where we bring you content to help you grow as a person and as a leader. FreudenFreude podcast, where we bring you content. Well, now we know that we are live. Sorry about that. The magic of technology when the replay starts automatically in your browser. Hi, Sandra.
Hi, how are you, Claudia? So today we are going to talk about intercultural, what is it? Wow, power distance 101, right? Wow, I was like, what? We're okay. So for all you to know, there's days that we allow ourselves to feel miserable, and today is one of those days, okay? And
Yeah,
so we're giving ourselves permission to feel how people feel, which is not always good. Okay,
yeah,
so
yeah.
yes.
You just happened to catch Sandra and me, both of us today, not that much in good form. Whether we allow
Yes.
it or not, the body does what the body does. But we had made ourselves a promise that if at all possible, we would show up. This is live. We are showing up. We're trying to provide this content, in the condition that we're in. And so bear with us. We hope, nevertheless, to cover some good stuff here for us. We actually did forget the introductions, starting with we are
Coaches.
coaches. We are indeed coaches, so we are going to probably have a little bit of that perspective on things. Today we are, as Sandra already pointed out, talking about power distance. This is in our intercultural intelligence series. And why don't you introduce what you do, Sandra, before we get started?
Yes, so I am a coach for leaders, for young professionals, neurodivergent, and global mobility professionals.
There you go, very well. And I work with corporate and entrepreneurial leaders as well as their teams. So they can not only navigate the complexities, but also thrive in today's ever more fast moving business landscape. So that out of the way, let's get started. We, both always talking about culture in its various forms, and that's why we reserve every third uh, show of the month to an intercultural setting. And this browser window is moving, so I'm going to close it. And one of the things that you do learn as you study culture is, among many other things, the cultural dimensions by Gerd Hofstede. And they provide kind of a lens through which you can kind of view an interaction in terms of culture. We are going to come back on others like high versus low context communication, ascription-based versus merit-based cultures, and so on and so on. There's a whole number of them. And today, to give you kind of an introduction to what a cultural dimension can look like, we used one that we kind of all have been exposed to already and that most of us are aware of, and that is power distance. Power distance. How would you explain power distance to somebody, Sandra?
So what I tell people power distance is the way that a culture manages ethics and respect towards one and the other. There is a respect for age, there's a respect for position in the company, and it's about mostly you to know where you stand in the company and what is your position and your role in the company. That's how I would explain uh, uh, power distance, right? Because mainly the word is what is your hierarchy and where do you stand in the company? In other words, know your place.
Right, right. And that's probably a very nice way of saying it. So I think it refers to the extent to which um, members of society expect and kind of accept that power is distributed unequally. Okay,
Mhm.
so in cultures with high power distance, there's a significant power gap because what we're looking at is not the absolute distance, the absolute position of power, but how is it distant between two people engaging in an interaction or two societies or whatever. So in high power distance, that gap is significant between those in authority and those without authority. And
Mhm.
it's interesting enough that most people go along with it and they accept and comply with those hierarchical structures. In cultures with lower power distance, it's much more egalitarian and therefore also more participative in decision-making processes. So that's kind of the theory behind it.
Right.
But let's think about an example maybe that maybe most of us have experienced in some form or fashion. It is the boss at work. Right, very simple. The boss at work, right?
Yeah.
Um, in if there's a large power distance, the boss is way up there, and everybody else is kind of on this level, right?
Mhm.
And we have had bosses that were like that. They were very high up in terms of their authority, and everybody else was less than or
Mhm.
needed to submit to this boss.
Yes.
And sometimes that boss does not necessarily need to be a boss from hell that pushes everybody down. No, it's just somebody who, in the way that they communicate, the way that they think, is just very authoritarian, and it's just in the way that they present themselves and that the company culture or the team culture is structured, that there's this big distance. We have also had bosses that were our best friends, and even though it was, let's say, the team lead was not significantly higher authority when they communicated with the members of the team. They might have asked for everybody's input, and there was kind of this collective decision making, even though he had additional responsibility, even though he had additional pay. Let's all admit to that, and more authority on paper and so on, but in the way that they interacted, it was still participatory, more egalitarian. Is that something that resonates with you, Sandra?
Yes. So I think, one of the most important things that we have to mention is that it also comes with generation, right? It comes with before COVID, we could see the change coming, right? We could see how millennials were trying to change that. And I say, one of the things that I was reading the other day was that millennials, not most of them, because of course we cannot generalize, were looking to change that generation X, which is where you and I are coming from, versus their generation, to balance the power, right? To find balance. And it was interesting to me because, you know, we were talking about finances and talking about what is the difference and what were they looking for in positions. And it was mostly about, again, trying to find that everybody cooperates, everybody works together. Of course, those that are in favor of working, because we have the other side. But when I think about the whole concept about the boss at work and everything else, when you're saying, not of course all the bosses are, oppressive and dominating and everything else, because the ones that come to mind is South Korea, Japan, China, and all those kind of bosses that are the high power distance bosses, right? Those are the ones usually that you kind of wonder, well, if employees are not involved in the process of making decisions, then who makes the decisions? Well, it would be an equal of your boss that would be talking about what is that they want to obtain, what is the results that they want to get, and then they just basically communicate it to you, and all you have to do is make it happen, right?
Yeah.
Versus in the US, I think there's, I was thinking, wait a second. Hold on. A boss is still a boss, regardless of where you are in the world. There is a power distance
There
because
always is some power distance, absolutely.
exactly. Ex-
Because I think some power distance comes with the territory because,
Mhm.
you know, I think it comes also with just inherent respect for the position.
Yes, exactly.
Because I mean they carry the load. If the team screws up, it's the boss, you know, the team lead or the leader who needs to carry that. I mean the buck stops
Yes.
there kind of. And so um
But
it's
that makes me wonder, what would millennials, how would those millennials that are trying to achieve a balance and equal distribution of responsibilities, how could you help your boss if what you're looking for is equal rights, equal decisions, equal everything? Um, so are you going to have a boss? Are you going to have somebody that's going to be responsible? Of course you do. Of course you have to have it.
I think that a fully non-hierarchical enterprise is not possible. I really don't think that everybody can be the same. There's always going to be
Exactly.
some structure. If you look at countries like Sweden and Denmark, for instance, the structures are very flat.
Yes.
Okay, between the CEO and the person on the ground floor, it's very flat. Versus, you know, some corporations can be extremely like tall with many layers of hierarchy and things like that. So, but I think zero hierarchy is not possible, and I think
Never.
that
Yeah.
ultimately the, you know, and also not all decisions can be, and that's a topic for another show. I don't think that all decisions can be, you know, democratic decisions in a company.
Right.
Sometimes somebody needs to just say,
Own
okay,
it.
and now
Yeah.
it's decided, and now,
Mhm.
you know, this is how we're going to do it. And but to come back with the thing, I think that um power distance, it is a societal culture thing, and we can go back and talk about South Korea a little bit. But it's see, in all, there can be bubbles, there can be microcosms where, let's say, a team culture or an organizational culture takes precedence over the societal culture at large. Okay. And
Mhm.
I mean, as a team coach, I see this. You go into maybe a company that is, by its very nature, extremely authoritarian, very top down, with relative high power distance. But you can create an environment within a team, for instance, where you say, okay, when we are in this room, and that door is closed, uh, can we come to an agreement of how we are going to communicate? Because we want to make progress for the company, for this product, for this service that we have to provide. So, right now in here, no matter what happens outside those doors, but in here, let's all agree to bring our ideas to the table, to speak up, and to, you know, have an open communication. So I think that
Sorry, there's a concert going. Okay, I'm going to mute myself. So if you want to continue talking, please.
she has a lot of dogs. Um, but I think that you can create this hyper contextualized environment, even if it's just boxed in time and boxed in space, where you can come to alternate agreements. So that is like a strategy that works very well in the workforce. On the other hand, while the dogs calm themselves, let me maybe go to a more societal example of power distance. And for instance, those that know about South Korea, even in the language, hierarchy is present. They have four levels of speech. Like Americans have like one level of speech, it's all you, right? Whether it's your boss, you say you, whether it's your child, you say you, it's one level of speech. You go into languages like Luxembourgish, German, French, Italian, a lot of other ones, they have at least two. They have the casual or impolite form. In German, it would be the du. And they have the polite form. In German, it would be the Sie. Okay, so and you would use one or the other depending on the situation. Well, Korea, mind you, has four. They have the deferential, they have the formal polite, the informal polite, and the casual. And it is extremely important that you use, if you speak Korean, the right level of speech to the right person. And it can be an extreme sign of disrespect to not use the correct one. If you were to go to and speak casually to your boss, big no. I mean, they might show you the door, right? I mean, literally. And so it is extremely important from a societal standpoint. What now determines the level of speech that you're gonna use? One that is extremely important over there is age. Even somebody who is 1 year older than you, irrespective of anything else, just based on the number, you would already, use a higher level of speech. You would not automatically, oh, we're kind of the same age, let's just, be friends and so on. It doesn't come naturally. Sometimes even those that do become friends need a long time to be able to accept that more casual approach. But
Mm,
so age is one.
mhm,
Then seniority is another one. Very, very big.
mhm.
I have been with the company 2 years. You have been with the company 1 year. I am your senior.
Yeah.
And actually the words of senior Sanbei and junior Hube are very common, that you would call somebody my senior. And that
Mhm,
can be a senior in the army, that can be a senior from school, that can be a senior from work. Incidentally, it was very interesting that sometimes it's not exactly clear because relationships change. I have one
mhm,
example that, unless you want to jump in, I'm just going to share. So there were these two people that knew each other from university, and uh, the guy was 1 year the senior of the girl. The gender here doesn't really matter, but it was like he was 1 year ahead. So he was the senior and she was the junior.
mhm,
Now he goes to the army for 2 years and comes back and finishes school. Now she's 2 years ahead. So 1 year ahead of him now in school. So
mhm,
from a school standpoint, she is now the senior. But from an
mhm,
age standpoint, he is still the senior. So you see
mhm,
how it can become really blurry. So is he now the senior because he's older? Is she now the senior because now she's 2 years ahead of him? And all of a sudden, also this power distance has shifted. Meaning before, he was the senior, now she's the senior. Again, age here doesn't matter in this discussion. Gender, sorry, doesn't matter in this
mm.
discussion. And
Okay.
and so it's really interesting how a promotion, how marrying into money, for instance, and raising your social status also can really make these relationships fluctuate from a power distance standpoint. And frankly, when I started learning more about the South Korean culture, it took me a while to get used to. I mean, I'm European mostly, but I lived 20 years in the US, so it's all kind of these mostly egalitarian merit-based things where, of course, we have power distance, but it's still kind of manageable, and it's not as rigid as over there. And for me, it took some getting used to just understanding the impact that a mentality like that of truly deference to authority can have. Sorry
Right.
about talking for so long, but
No,
it's
thank you. You saved my concert goers here. Um, yeah. What I wanted to mention is just to give an example. But first, I want to ask you a question because this is very important. And one of the things that we have to ask is, what would happen if people are unaware of the importance of the kind of power distance that exists in that country? Um, would it make a difference if you were just going as a tourist? Would it make a difference if you were going to work? Would it make a difference, I'm sorry, if you were going on a business trip? I think yes, yes, and yes. But it means, what I'm trying to say is that it makes a huge difference because at the end it's all the same. Respect, hierarchy is hierarchy, levels are levels, and so on and so on. And
I think
so
yeah,
what
I,
would
I
you
think
say?
I think if you go in as a tourist, especially also if you don't speak Korean, right?
Mm-hmm.
If you go in as a tourist, you speak English, of course, you should respect people no matter where you go, right? And
Yeah.
if in doubt, just be polite, be respectful, and then you're good. As soon as you start learning Korean, which I am at this moment, don't ask me about the progress. It's slow, slow going, but nevertheless, I learn Korean. But there too, I mean, they start teaching you the different levels of speech. So from the beginning of learning, essentially, so you cannot just say, "Well, I'm going to learn the highest level of speech and then talk with the highest differential level of speech to everybody." Because that also doesn't really sit right. So I think even if you do learn Korean, either you learn it together with all the different speech things and particles and all that kind of complicated stuff, or you just don't use it until you know that stuff. Because I
Ex-
think the danger of using the wrong one and offending people, is it really worth it to show off your like A1 level of Korean and then doing it wrong? On the
right.
other hand, I think that many people would probably be happy to see that you put in the effort of learning their language and things like that. So maybe it also depends on who you're with. If you go and visit somebody you're semi-friendly with and you happen to use the wrong level of speech, you
Right.
know maybe you can a priori say, I'm still a beginner, I'm not exactly sure if I might use the wrong thing, please let me know, and do not take it as a sign of disrespect. Just
Right.
frame it like that and then go for it. As soon as you're in the professional arena, though, I think you have to be really mindful of that stuff.
What I was listening to a video just yesterday, and then today I was reading a article, and one of the videos that I was watching was of a girl that went to South Korea, and then of a woman, a black woman that goes to Dubai. Whew. So the South Korean girl had, if you can say, a little bit of a sour tone to the situation that she experienced, where the ladies at the stores and everything else would tell her, "Oh, you're a little bit chunky," and you could see the girl and she was thin. But because of the culture, you know, she wasn't, she, it didn't even cross her mind that somebody would see her and say that she was fat. Well, it happened. She was seen as fat and constantly being reminded that she should buy herself a smaller size so that she can get inspired to lose the excess weight. And you're like, oh my God, how is that possible? But if people were to prepare themselves, right, on how to mentally, emotionally prepare themselves into traveling to certain countries with a certain type of either high or low power distance, a lot of things would be different. And this also is connected to the Black lady that, and I have to say, her situation was that she is a little bit of a complicated person. She's had problems before, but going to Dubai, there's one of the things here, we have laws where people respect each other. You don't raise your voice, you don't cuss, you don't, you're not inappropriate. In other words, you're very respectful to people. There is some kind of freedom of speech, but as long as you are respectful to people. And my sister told me, well, maybe it's because there's no freedom of speech. And I said, excuse me, but saying freedom of speech does not imply that you have the right to insult people. It actually means that you should be respectful to everybody. Well, she got in trouble. She is still in Dubai. She cannot leave because she has been, her passport has been taken away from her. And her mom and her are changing the rhetoric where they're arranging it to say, well, we don't know what we did wrong. My daughter's scared, blah, blah, blah. And Dubai, well, as soon as they heard what was going on, Dubai responded and said, this is what happened, and this is why we're taking action, because it is against our laws. So if it is against their laws, this is a way to remind people, unfortunately, a very sad way to remind people of you being aware of what to expect and what not to do in countries that you go and visit, right? Because we're so used to just traveling and everything's going to be wonderful and everything's going to be beautiful. And we think that we got it made because, hey, I'm just going to go to this country and I'm going to be good. And no, there's so much you have to learn before you go to these countries, right? So I think I wanted to mention that because a lot of people say, there's always those posts that say, I wish I knew this about X, Y, and Z before I traveled to this X, Y, and Z country, right? And you're like, you wish you knew, so you didn't do your homework before? You could have done that. You could have saved yourself a lot of trouble if you would have done that. There's so much importance into understanding society and to understanding community importance and to understanding religion importance, because even religion has a power and low power distance. I'd say that most religions are high power distance. And so if you don't understand what you're going to, your religion could be the same in one country to the other, but because of the different type of hierarchy and levels and everything else, they're going to manage things differently. And you're going to think that you're walking into, oh, I'm just going to walk into church and do my thing. No.
Because unfortunately, there's still a lot of people that travel and they think they're just going to a place that looks different, meaning different nature, different attractions, and stuff
Language.
like that,
Yep.
without, yeah, different language, without, really appreciating that it's a different culture and it really can be very different. And
Mhm.
unless get a little bit more aware, maybe in general about culture, like for instance, learning about the Hofstadter dimensions and
Mhm.
others, so that when you're with your feet on the ground, you can kind of recognize, oh, it looks like I am now in a high power distant society. I better watch out. Oh,
Mhm.
it appears like I'm in a high context language kind of situation, so I better watch out, so that you have kind of this framework by which you can measure the culture that you're in. I think that's
Mhm,
what people that have cultural intelligence per se have. They have
mhm.
this kind of um, understanding of the characteristics of a culture, and then they can kind of observe and see what's going on around them and then adapt that quickly,
Right.
rather than reading a book of how to behave in. Right. And I'm all for the how to behave in XYZ country. I'm all for it. Um, because otherwise you might be really surprised, and stuff might get awkward or uncomfortable for you and the people that you meet.
Mhm,
Again, if in doubt, be polite, and take the safe route. Even in a low power distance country, if you're polite and differential, not a doormat, mind you, but just
mhm.
like respectful to others and stuff like that. You're not gonna behave badly because those
Yeah.
rules still work, right? Assuming
Mhm.
high power distance in low power distance countries, it's not gonna get you killed, okay?
Right.
But as the hierarchy becomes more in need of subtlety, for instance, in uh, contract negotiations, where you really have to figure out where do you stand and where can you apply just that little bit more pressure because you have more power, more authority, and so on. In that case, you really have to study up. I really.
Yes. Let me ask you something, Claudia. So, what would be your advice on how people can distinguish high power distance countries?
Well, I think that more than how authoritative high the people with high power are, for me personally, this is personal thing, it's more like how differential are people with less power,
Mm,
right? Because the basic stance of a human, I think, is not to be differential that much.
okay.
I
Okay.
think at least in most people that I know and the cultures that I have lived in, the baseline would be more egalitarian. So, um, to always just say yes and completely subjugate yourself to authority, I do not think, and this might be my cultural blind spot, mind you, that is a natural thing. So when you see how people are deferential, um, it speaks to that. In terms of age, though, age as a sign of authority, you just need to look at what old people do.
Monkey see, monkey do, right?
Oh my God, because some older people, they when they really have I mean it's the same kind of everywhere, but when they really do not have any filter anymore, and they just
Yeah.
say, and they say it with authority because that's their opinion at a certain age, um how much the younger ones accept what is being said,
Mm,
and essentially how rude the old people can be. Because like you mentioned, this girl that was being told uncertain terms that she was fat,
mm. Poor
right?
thing. Yeah.
I mean, in a that is like in certain Asian cultures, it would be like the old people can absolutely say to your face, you're fat.
Yeah.
And you're supposed to, like, yes ma'am,
Yeah.
ma'am.
Yeah.
And versus, I think if somebody here would tell me outright to my face, I would say, like, excuse me, and what business of yours is that? Right?
Yes.
And so it is. You feel it, you sense it, because it's just as, how much crap do you take?
Right. Right.
How much
Okay.
crap
Well,
how much crap do you give and how much crap do you take? Before does now I draw the line, or now the line has been crossed. That is really it. How much do you accept to take, or how much is acceptable for you to give? That's essentially what it is. It's very hard to pinpoint, but you see it even in a team, because that is very much the scenario nowadays. In global teams, we have people from all various power distance level countries coming together in one team, and it's a mixture of it, and you can tell people that have a high power distance mindset versus the ones that don't, in the way that they interact, can't you? I
Yeah,
think.
definitely. Yes, you can. Yep, yep. Um, well, okay, so the reason why I ask is because we're talking about high power distance and low power distance. And a lot of people are listening or will listen to this hopefully. And when they're going to listen and say, well, how can I tell what is low and what is high? Well, I think, again, like Claudia said, you do have to do your research, first of all. And second, you do have to create some kind of resilience. You have to build resilience, because there is no point in fighting something that you cannot change. And you're not there to change anything. You're there to enjoy your vacations, if that's what you're going for, or to live the experience of closing a business, something related to that. And what I've always heard is monkey see, monkey do. And when in Rome, right? And I think for a lot of people it works. Just copy what the other person does in the room, and basically you're going to be okay, unless somebody tells you and lets you approach them or something like that, whatever is the situation.
and
Now if
and if
oh,
you
yeah,
don't know, say that you don't know.
exactly, like you were saying, yes,
I mean,
apologize, yes.
right? I mean, you can preempt a lot of these misunderstandings, if you're a guest in a country or in a business and so on, and stuff all of a sudden starts to go haywire, and you wonder, what's going on here. You can just say, like, is here something that I am not getting? Did I commit a faux pas?
Mhm.
What is happening here? And just speaking up that way, right? I mean, um, it happens. It happens.
Yes, because one of the misunderstandings of cultural, you know, a cultural situation of misunderstanding can lead you to prison, or it can get you fired, like Claudia was saying originally, and it can literally get you fired if you were to talk to somebody that you are not eligible for, or entitled, in this case would be the right word, entitled to talk to, based on hierarchy in the company or in society. And so, it makes me think, okay, wait a second. So we talk about living in high power societies and low power societies. I'm thinking
Power distance, yeah.
I'm sorry, power distance societies. And I'm thinking, well, is society in general high or low? I'd say it's high.
Well, I think
It's
that
a little bit of both.
it really does depend, right? It really does
Yes.
depend. I would say that some countries are definitely much more hierarchical than others. Um, and let's say that somebody is the mayor of your town. Somebody is the mayor of your town. That's a societal construct, right?
Yes.
It's somebody, he might be the guy next door, but he also happens to be the mayor of the town. How much you can go up to this guy and pat him on the shoulder and say, hey, let's go for a drink, because he is still the guy next door. Or how much you have to already say, oh, Mr. Mayor, nice to see you today, and so on, even though he's still the guy next door. That is a power distance thing. Because in some cultures, just the fact that you have that title, now you're in a different league.
Mhm.
And there is this automatic installment of distance, that comes with it, and then you are not at the same level anymore, but there's this distance. However, in some countries it's still like, I went to school with this guy. I don't need to use polite form when I talk to him now, because I've always said do, and so I don't need to now start to use the polite form. But in some countries that would be a no-no. So it really, really does depend. It really, really does depend.
It does. And I wanted to say that, let me see. Let me try to get my idea because I missed it. Oops, that train already passed. Yeah, I'm trying to remember. It was something that's say important. Well, I think it has to do with what you were saying about the mayor. Oh, entitlement and power distance are two different things. Power distance is usually the way that a place or a position, or yeah, a place, the place that you hold in that society and the position that you hold in that society, regardless of whether it's a job, whether it's your little social circle, cultural social circle, church circle, wherever you go. That's a one is different than the other. Entitlement means that you, like Claudia was saying, you become the mayor of the city. Well, you can either be the most simple person and still, just do your job, do your profession, and hey, like we've seen a lot of videos that a lot of mayors of many towns get stopped by the police, and the first thing that they do is, show their credentials. I am the mayor of the city. Are you sure you want to treat me that way? I'm going to call so and so and so. That's entitlement. That is not power distance, right? Power distance is each one knowing their place, because with power distance comes responsibility. With power comes responsibility. That's the truth. And a lot of people think that I'm joking when I put that. It's something that, I think it was said first in with Spider-Man. And um, and so if you become the mayor, your responsibility is not in doing the job, but also in putting on the shirt and the hat, and being ethical
Showing
and
it.
being
Yeah.
respectful, right? And showing some class into what you do, and giving the name some um giving the mayor title the position that it holds in society,
Right.
rather than saying, oh, I'm just being entitled, and I'm going to do whatever I want because I got
And
this position.
the same holds at work, right? I mean, if you're a startup, you have the CEO of the startup who came up with the idea, who's building it all, who is the one who goes out and gets the investments, and drives the initial strategies of the thing like that. That person, is not like the individual contributor who just sits in his or her cubicle doing their tech thing. Okay.
Mhm.
There's it's just, I think that with it comes this responsibility and this respect that is inherent in the position and the burden that they shoulder. And I think most people will probably agree to that, some people just are the driving forces and require that respect. And then they naturally, when these people are in the room, they naturally are going to, be maybe more respectful to that person than their peer. But again, this is all fairly artificial. In certain also ascription based things, it's like, imagine you're a medium-sized company, and you have been in that company for 15 years, and you're like, let's say, a team lead, and you have really a lot of seniority, and you know this company in and out. And now comes the boss's son, fresh out of some no-name college, doesn't know anything about anything, and just has maybe even the sense of entitlement in as terms of mindset. But the boss puts his son, in a leadership position, and he becomes your boss. So you see how power distance, even though that young guy has now the director position, whatever, right? Does he really carry that weight? He got there through nepotism, not because of the size of his experience and his dedication and his work, right?
Skills. Yep, yep, yep.
Responsibility that he can carry. So it can become really tricky when the title should be, this measure of authority. And this is something we're going to talk about again in ascription versus merit-based approaches, which is another cultural lens. But so it always depends, and it's not always straightforward, right? To be required to show respect to certain people, individuals, specific individuals that you don't necessarily respect. You don't
Mm,
necessarily respect. So that is where the pain of high power distance can sometimes really be felt,
yes.
right? Really
Yeah.
felt. And
Yes.
so, or when, let's say, in I don't want, but let's say rich people get away with stuff that poor people wouldn't get away with.
Mm-hmm,
We all
mm-hmm,
have heard things like that as well, right?
mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
And so there too, it's like, it's not always easy to, you know, sh-
Balance. Yeah.
show the respect necessarily where society might think it is due as a general rule. So that I think is really a tricky kind of thing. Yeah.
Right. Right. Um, let's see. Let me give out the names of certain countries that hold high power distance. So, kind of help out. I'm going to give three. Okay, I'm going to give three. The rest is up to the people to find out. So I can say that the Philippines is one of them, Mexico is one of them, and Brazil. Turns out Brazil is one of them. I'm a little bit surprised of Brazil being part of the list of high power distance, but they fell into that list.
Interesting.
And yeah, interesting. And let me give for low power distance, you said it yourself, Denmark, Sweden, and another one, and interesting would be New Zealand.
Oh, interesting.
Mm-hmm,
High power distance, I would add, South Korea and China, like some of the Asian
mm-hmm,
countries,
yep,
but also, let's say, certain African countries, high respect for the elders, authority
yeah,
figures, and so on.
yes, yes,
And
correct.
so, they exist. They exist. And that was very nice. Thank you. And so, okay, you go to work, you are part of a multinational team where people kind of source from all over. And some of them might even still be in their respective countries, and all you do is meet via Zoom, right? It happens nowadays, global teams.
Mm-hmm.
So you can imagine that this can become quite a challenge when you have, let's say, a Swedish guy and a South Korean guy and an American guy, and
Yes.
you have all these people kind of in the same room with their own inherent, basic, trained on cultural ways of dealing with authority and power.
Mm-hmm.
We have talked already at length about psychological safety, haven't we?
Yes.
And so this ability to speak up is a characteristic of a positive psychological safety environment. Are you able to ask a question? Are you able to um, point out something that isn't right? Are you able to ask for help? Are you able to give help? Are you able to contradict somebody else? Are you able to offer your ideas? Those kind of things, which we all would hopefully agree are instrumental in a truly collaborative work environment that builds good teams and good performance.
Right.
That,
Let's not for, oh, sorry.
go ahead, go ahead.
No, I just wanted to say that in that, also in that pot is the communication style, right? How
Right,
you,
right, right.
effective communication. Yeah.
Right,
Mhm.
right. And so, but now imagine how that looks like a priori for people
Mhm.
from different power distance places. A person who comes from a really high power distance culture, when the boss is in the room, are they
Mm.
really able to speak up and ask questions and contradict or point out a flaw or offer an area for improvement? You
Yeah.
see that it becomes really, really tricky. And and then how does maybe a boss that comes from a high power distance culture. God, we said it enough times this hour. High power distance culture. How does he or she deal with um, reports or teammates that come from a low power distance culture? Will
Mhm.
he or she feel affronted when they speak up and they just tell him outright, "Hey, dude, you don't know what you're talking about," or whatever the case may be? So it can make for really a lot of misunderstandings and communication faux pas, as just because of these inherent assumptions about authority and how we work together. That I think
Exactly.
is why it is so important to talk about this and not assume.
Thank you for that. I wanted to also include, you know, I'm pretty sure that some people are going to wonder, well, okay, so if you've given me all this information, so how do I, what tips could you give me to adapt, to excel in these culturally diverse settings, regardless of where I go? Well, I think that the first one that I would give is taking a course on culture, right? That would be getting a little bit of a cultural awareness training, which is highly important, and not just a little bit. I would say that, ICQ would be a really good program to explore when you're going into different countries, depending on your position in the company. I would say also practice active listening. Right? How many times have we've not said, make sure that you're paying attention. You're not thinking about what answer to give. Don't choose what's going to be the answer before the person has finished. So on and so on and so on. I think we have to practice listening to the person from the beginning to the end, and then think a little bit, because nobody's rushing you into answering. Think a little bit and then answer. I would say
Sorry, and active listening also includes looking for the nonverbal cues. Who
yes,
who is
yes.
silent, who is not. It's not just listening to the words, but how they are delivered, the body language of the person, and so on. That gives you a lot of clues as well.
And one of what Claudia was saying is ask questions and seek clarification. Right, that is very, very important, because not only are they noticing that you have an interest in the culture, but you're also trying to do things right. So practice, practice, practice. Ask questions and seek clarification.
And being able to show yourself as vulnerable and literally saying, "I think I sense something is off here. Did I do something wrong? Right? Literally asking these things, but also being able to, um, to not go in there with the idea that you have all the answers. But a little
Right.
humility goes a long way.
Right, right. And so those are my three. I like to only give three because if they want to hear more, they're going to have to subscribe to either your website or my website and or reach out to us so that we can give them more information. How about that? So
Yeah,
now
yeah.
do you have any advice?
I think that if you go into a culture, a specific culture, maybe get some information about it. Like if you visit a country, let's say, go for it. Otherwise, truly having this awareness that not everybody is like you, and that power distance, for instance, is one of the things that people can have fundamentally different experiences from the one that you have and expectations from the one that you have. As a leader, I think it is very, very important to talk about these things and not just assume. And I think that I would always start with a psychological safety agreement. This, and you don't need to call it that, of course. Call it ground rules. It's like how we communicate, how we collaborate, right? How we get along. It's kind of just like, let's talk about it. Let's put it out there. And
Yep,
such an agreement, whether it's formalized or not, very often it is written down. Right? Everybody gets heard. Everybody gets the chance to ask questions.
yeah,
It's okay to not know. It is okay to ask for help. Stuff like that. It's not
yep,
complicated.
no, yeah,
But if it is captured and it's there, it's usually a living, breathing document. And a good leader is going to refer to it very regularly, maybe in the weekly meeting. Are we still okay with our ground rules? Remember the ground rules. This is how we're going to hold this meeting. And
mhm,
it becomes part of this context, this bubble in which this work team works and collaborates and exists. And then a good one that works, like a good grassroots movement, can indeed percolate through the rest of an organization. If a team works really well because of it, it's gonna spread little by little.
yep,
And so hopefully then even bring, from a team culture, would then maybe grow an organizational culture that is more, because it also speaks to diversity and inclusion and belonging and all
mhm,
those things, doesn't it? Yeah.
mhm, mhm,
And
mhm,
and so you know but again, always it depends, and believe it or not, it's one of the topics that often comes up when you do leadership coaching and expat coaching and things like that, and
mhm,
all the way up to organizational transformational initiatives. I mean, you see this is truly practical on the ground stuff. This is not some esoteric, removed, academic, theoretical kind of concept. No, this is very real, very real.
yes, exactly. So that is from my side, Claudia, that is it. Do you want to add anything else?
No, I think we covered the 101 part of power.
Yes.
Right? Maybe let's conclude. We thought we wouldn't have that long to talk about,
No.
but we still finished our hour. It's crazy. In any case, everybody, thank you so much for listening. Maybe some of you guys have actually come to the end of this show altogether. In any case, please, if you have any anecdotes to share, some insights, some questions even, feel free to reach out. Our contact information is in the description of this video. You can always find us on social media anyway, and you can also just leave a comment attached to this video. If you show us some love, please subscribe to the channel and otherwise engage with our content, because we will be back with much more very soon. Thank you so much, Sandra, and this was great. I really enjoyed this.
Thank you. I did too, Claudia. I appreciate the people that are watching that, like you said, that have reached the end of this video. And if you have reached the end of this video, I would like to offer you a free 45-minute coaching session. So reach out to me to my webpage that is located here in the information and the comment section. Thank you very much, Claudia. Thank you, everyone, for watching.
Yeah, absolutely. You can always reach out, as we have already said. Absolutely. So thank you so much. And we did show up despite headaches and not feeling so great, and we managed to kill an hour. So it's really great. Thank you so much. See you soon. Bye bye.
Thank you.